Hello, my name is Leanne Favreau, and welcome to our first edition of Northwestern Ontario Voices, Kenora. Northwestern Ontario Voices is dedicated to bringing you local news and information. We also invite you to bring the issues that matter to you to our attention, either by following us and commenting via social media at NWO Voices, or by emailing us with your topic or question at info@nwovoices.ca. Homelessness is a key issue, not just in Northwestern Ontario, but everywhere in the country. Canada has also experienced an increasing population and declining wages minimum, and that has not kept up with inflation. As a result, Canadian homelessness has increased, and many more are at risk of becoming homeless. Homeless Canadians include men, women, and families with children, youth, older adults, seniors, and veterans. Today, Janalee Jodwin is here, and she is going to help me discuss important issues like homelessness in Kenora. Janalee is an economic development advisor, and she has been working very hard to help those experiencing homelessness in our communities. So to start off with, Janalee, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the work that you have done advocating with dealing with the homelessness.
So I hail from Red Lake. So back in 2014, I was somehow voluntold into a board for the emergency shelter, the homeless shelter. Mm-hmm. And I just started to develop. I walked in and it was a mess. I had wonderful family and friends to help open it. So we opened it in October of 2014, reopened it as it would close every summer because of funding. So from that point on, we never closed again. We didn't ever close in the summer. We didn't ever close at all.
Really?
So there was a large deficit that we had to do a lot of work on, and as well as the building. So thankfully the community of Red Lake is super giving and was very responsive to my transparency as to what was happening with the shelter.
Wonderful.
So from that point on, we ended up building a new shelter in the midst of town. Wow. With two transitional apartments attached to the shelter to provide those wraparound supports. It's there existing, it's beautiful. People are utilizing it. It appears that people are, we have a less homeless population in Red Lake, or at the very least, less people at risk.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about some contributing factors. Why do you think homelessness is such a huge issue in Kenora and in Northwestern Ontario?
Well, that's a really complex, because I think if we had the answers to that, I think that we wouldn't be where we are. So for a variety of reasons, people are coming from other communities, wherever that may be, for medical, for part of the justice system, for court, for jail, like whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
And they're getting caught in systems that were not designed for people that may not have the ability to find ways to get back to their communities, or whatever the case may be. There's a variety of things. So Northwestern Ontario, geographically, you have your spots. So you have Winnipeg, which is obviously Manitoba, but then Kenora, and then where's the next spot? Dryden doesn't have anywhere. Sioux Lookout, people are ending up there.
Okay.
Thunder Bay, people are ending up there. And it's all those hot spots for medical appointments or for shopping or for whatever. So it's a complex, it's not an easy solution to come up with. If it was, then I would hope that we wouldn't be where we are now.
Right. And we had talked a little bit about that earlier when we were comparing numbers, say to a large city, the city of Kenora versus, say, the city of Vancouver, number-wise. Maybe kind of touch a little bit on some of those numbers that we talked about and how people can sort of you know, when you're looking at it like, wow, we've got 500 people here versus 5,000 people there, maybe sort of touch on that again too, just to bring it into perspective.
Well, they did a census per se I would say about 5 years ago on the homeless population. And when you look at Toronto's homeless population, and the other thing is that there's a lot of hidden homelessness that we're not even seeing in Northwestern Ontario or anywhere in Canada. People are couch surfing or whatever the case may be, sleeping outside, sleeping in the rough. So Toronto is 5 million people-ish, and they have, the census came up with about 10,000 people. But like I said, this was about 5 years ago, so it could be increased exponentially. Northwestern Ontario, the catchment area is less than 70,000. So when you look at the ratio and we have 500 across Northwestern Ontario out of 70,000, less than 70,000, and you have 10,000 out of 5 million, think about what that ratio is. So it is a big problem. It doesn't look like a great big number because it's 500. 500 seems, but when the ratio is there, and Toronto has a million other different services, Red Lake, Suluk, we all don't have those. We don't have the funding for those services. We don't have the people. We don't have the staffing. So that's why it's such a crisis here. And it gets 40 below.
Exactly.
You can't sleep outside.
No, for sure. So do you think that maybe the pandemic, we've gone into COVID mode at this point, did the pandemic impact supports for anything, struggling with homelessness?
I think that the pandemic probably exposed a lot of cracks in our society as a whole. We see it in healthcare. We're seeing it with a homelessness population. I don't know that that it really affected. It just probably brought it more to the forefront. It was always there.
Exactly.
We just weren't paying attention. And then all of a sudden, when you have nowhere for people to go, and now you have people, 100 people at a shelter, or whatever the case may be. Now, and you have to put those protections in place for people for COVID. Now you really have to, how do we do this? How does this work?
Right.
And the numbers just were shocking when you look at across the country what's happening with our population.
I bet. So do you think there's a difference between experiencing homelessness in a smaller community compared to a larger one?
Well, I can say, for instance, in Kenora, when you have a situation where you don't have enough space for people, to a steady place where people can rely on. They have to kind of map out their day, where they're going to eat, where they're going to sleep, and is it going to be full? And this is happening in Winnipeg as well, in Toronto as well. But there's a lot more support and options in Toronto and Winnipeg.
Absolutely agree.
Again, it's a crisis everywhere, but certainly in Kenora and Northwestern Ontario as a whole, we are seeing that people need a place to call home, whatever that may be. Even if they're just stuck for the time being, they still need the stability of knowing that they can go wake up, have breakfast, all the things that our basic needs are. Housing, water, right, food.
The basics.
The basics.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned before things like, and I've heard, sometimes people, it's like, oh, that person is couch surfing. Are there different types of homelessness?
Certainly there is. We discussed this before we were here. That you've got a variety, and that's part of, I think, the trying to figure this out, and how to. You've got people that are addicts. Right. You've got people that are just for whatever reason, traumas in their life that they can't get to the next step or level. You've got people that are suffering mental health issues. You've got women in violence, certainly.
Absolutely.
Men in violence. Let's not dismiss that as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So you have, and then you have people sleeping outside, couch surfing. There's a whole wide variety. You can't just be that person's homeless and they must be an addict, they must be an alcoholic, they must be a criminal, they must be this, they must be that. That's why this is so complex. It's not just an easy paint it with the same brush. Let's do the same thing for everybody, and we'll solve the problem.
Well,
that's not how it works.
You and I had said that these are human beings, and
Yes.
walk a mile. I always walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Yes.
Right. So
You have to meet people where they're at. You can't just, I can't say to you, Leanne, I will feed you if you're sober, if you're this, if you're that. It can't be conditional. Empathy and love is not conditional.
Right.
And most people that are suffering homeless, and from my experience, and I've seen hundreds of people, a lot of times, and maybe it's simplistic of me to say, a lot of times it's just about love. It's just about feeling love. It's about how do I feel loved? I'm not important enough to feel love. It's about hugging somebody. It's about human touch. It's about a whole wide variety of empathy and sympathy and just
Caring.
and caring. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Meet them where they're at. Don't tell them they have to do X, Y, and Z before I can help you, because that's not the way. And don't treat them like criminals,
Right.
because maybe there's 1 in 10 that are, but the 9 that need your help, don't treat them like a criminal. Meet them where they're at, see what their needs are, and go from there. Map each person. And that it might sound, that's a lot of work and that's a lot of services, but so is an ambulance. So is the hospital stay. So is the jail. So
Good
is
point.
So add that amount up,
Yes.
and then let's see. But we've been doing this for a really long time, and I think that I'm not sure why we haven't stepped further. Because it took one person with passion to make a difference in a small community. We can do this. I know we can.
I agree. Now, I mean, aid is a word that comes up with something like this. So what funding is available to aid homeless?
There's tons of funding out there, but part of the problem is having somebody tenacious enough to pursue it, to write grants. I built the entire shelter and the entire transitional apartments with funding grants. So whether it's through United Way, there's a million different places that you can go, and a lot of times you have to do fundraising for different projects, but we're doing that for our hospitals.
True.
Why can't we do, like, people are willing to buy 50/50s so there's opportunity there to make a difference via fundraising as well. But again, it's bodies to write grants, it's bodies to research. That all takes a lot of time.
Well, and that kind of thing too, like the effort, the raising money and all that kind of thing too, so that it all comes together to provide. It's one of those words that I use quite often.
But there needs to be a plan. What I'm seeing across Canada really is, well, there's this committee and that committee and this committee and that committee, and we're all going to do different things, but we're all going to solve the problem. But how about we come up with a plan? How about we collaborate? How about we work together, municipalities, cities, townships, all your independent holistic groups or whatever may be. Let's all work together to solve the problem. But everybody thinks they have the magic answer. Well, the magic answer isn't to continue to waste money. That's not the magic answer.
No. Now, operating an emergency shelter, that it provides homelessness and the poverty-related kinds of things. What do some of those services include?
At the beginning, it was the basic needs.
Okay.
You're talking food, shelter, like clothing. We had a lot of donations, and I know that Kenora is a very giving city
Yes,
as well.
I agree.
So that I know that there's a lot of donations of clothing. Certainly when they reach out, if there's any outreach, they get inundated with socks or whatever,
Okay.
right? And Red Lake was absolutely the same, sometimes to the nth degree that it was like, okay, I can't handle any more socks right now because we have buckets and buckets of them,
Right.
which was, how do you say, stop giving the
Please
socks,
don't
right?
give me that,
Because
right.
those will be
Right.
gone in a month,
Oh,
right?
yes, for sure.
So your basic needs. But then the difference that I think I fostered was the love part, the caring part, the let's celebrate people's birthdays, let's celebrate their achievements, let's wrap our arms around them for whatever they're needing. And another thing is when somebody came to the door and we said, where are you from? And they said X, Y, and Z. Do you have a home to go back to? Yes. Then let's get you there.
Wonderful.
And the next day it was, we were on the phone, we were contacting who we needed to contact, and they were on a plane or on a bus or whatever the case may be, and they were back in their communities.
That's wonderful.
It's pretty, that seems pretty easy.
Yep.
But again, it comes to money, and it comes to bodies and people wanting to work with people at risk. And sometimes that's hard.
Now, some of those, again, like the services that you're offering, are there referrals to, I mean, like we said, the basics, are there referrals to other needs, like any mental health or addictions or employment, housing, anything like that?
Yes, all of
Okay.
those. So by the time I left the shelter, it was a big hub of, we did food bags and we did
Great.
all of those
That's-
outreach services to housing, to mental health, counseling, to addictions, whatever we had in the community. Red Lake's a small community. There were sometimes we didn't have those services but we would do as much outreach as we could. Kenora, actually, we would outreach to detox here.
Right.
Morningside, I think it's Morningside.
It is.
So there was always that was constantly going on. We got funding from United Way for a program manager. We did, Christmas. It was just,
that's
it ended up
great.
to be some relationships made that will be forever for me and for my staff. My staff I'm still friends with. They know they can come to me for any needs they have. So it's just, it was creating a family environment
Bond. Yep.
and bonding with people and getting them to understand that there were good people in the world
Right.
that they could trust to help them move to the next step, wherever that may be.
Now, you have one shelter in Red Lake, and do you know how many roughly are in Kenora? I can think of 3.
I don't know that there's any that are open 24 hours a day.
Okay, I was going to say, do you know? Yeah.
I feel like from
Operational.
what I have been kind of hearing, I've been here only a short time, so I'm trying to poke my nose into where I can help facilitate any change or help in any way I can, whether it be
Okay.
washing dishes or whatever that may be. But that's, I think, sometimes part of the problem is that people are scared, or people don't know, or people are misunderstanding how it works. And so being transparent about what your services are and the people that are involved with them, it really helps people in the community to understand what it's all about, and how that one person that may have committed a crime for whatever reason, there's always, 2 parts to the story. There's another 9 behind them that just need a friend to play checkers with, or to take for a ride. I took so many trips to get coffee and hot chocolate and donuts, and some people just need
That
friend or
connection. It's a connection.
Yeah.
I agree. Now, is there anything, say, before we sort of close it off here, that that you really want to put out there and get that point across, so to speak?
I imagine that people would be like, oh, well, she's not from Kenora, she doesn't understand. I have met and worked with hundreds of people that have been in risky situations, whatever that may be. I've never been scared because I understand and I educated myself. I empathize with people that have had some issues with certain people, but we have to be careful not to paint the whole population like that. So I think that change needs to happen sooner than later, because people are dying, and people that are, we as a society and as a city and as a township or municipality, really the way that you look at when people talk about Kenora is how you treat your most vulnerable people. So when you treat your seniors poorly, or your at-risk people poorly, or your vulnerable population, what does it say about you as a city, as a community?
Mm-hmm.
We should be being okay with reaching out to help. But I think everybody's kind of taken a step back. And so nothing's really changed. There hasn't been much movement since I've been actively involved with my role with the shelter in Red Lake. Nothing's really moved a lot. So why is that?
Good question.
Everybody's sitting on boards and committees, and we're all like, where's the dollars going? I'd be very interested to see where all the dollars are going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my, I guess, public public announcement is ask questions and get involved. Don't just be negative and, post on Facebook about people and homeless people, because the honest truth is that you have no idea what the story is. You have
Knowledge
no idea.
is power.
Yes.
Knowledge
Educate
is
yourself.
power. Right.
And the more that you educate yourself, the more you'll see there's reasons why. And be thankful that you or your family members have not had to knock on the doors of the shelters. Because it changes the perspective when you do.
I'm sure it does.
When it hits home, it changes your perspective.
Wonderful. Okay, I'd like to thank you very much, because again, I thought I knew quite a bit, but you have definitely educated me on the topic.
I can talk forever about it. I'm very passionate about just love, be kind to each other, and you'd be surprised at how your world changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This topic is not something that can be summed up in one conversation with one or two people, and we hope to keep the conversation going by inviting organizations and individuals who are also working hard to help. Can you share any information about organizations or programs out there helping now? Thank you for joining us on our very first conversation on Northwestern Ontario Voices Kenora. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Jana Lee for being our very first guest. Please send your topic, ideas, comments, and questions to info@nwovoices.ca. For Northwestern Ontario Voices, I'm Leanne Favreau.